tonight. I slept through the natural light, but I'll do it if it feels alright. Alright, alright, ah!
Hello and welcome to Central Coast Poetry Shows, and I'm your host, Jim Russo. My reason for producing this show is this. For about 10 years, I've been reading and attending poetry readings all over California's Central Coast. And during that time, I've had the privilege of hearing and seeing some very talented poets read their own words. This show is to be a platform for those poets to be seen and heard by you. Tonight, our guest is Ellen Bass. Ellen Bass' most recent books of poetry are Like a Beggar from Copper Canyon Press, 2014, and The Human Line, again from Copper Canyon Press, 2007. She co-edited with Florence Howe the first major anthology of women's poetry, No More Masks, an anthology of women's poems by women. That's in Doubleday in 1973. Her poetry has appeared frequently in The New Yorker, the American Poetry Review, and many other journals. Among her awards are a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts and a fellowship from the California Arts Council, 3 Pushcart Prizes, the Lambada Literary Award, the Pablo Neruda Prize, the Larry Lavis Prize, and the New Letters Prize. Her nonfiction books include Free Your Mind, the book for gay, lesbian, and bisexual youth and their allies, and I Never Told Anyone, writings by women survivors of child sexual abuse, and The Courage to Heal, a guide for women survivors of child sexual abuse, which has been translated into 12 languages. She is a chancellor at the Academy of American Poets and teaches in the MFA writing program at Pacific University. And I'd like to introduce my guest, Ellen Bass. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you
for inviting me.
You. We wanted to begin by talking about poetry in jails, which is a topic you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So
I was the Santa Cruz Poet Laureate. And
I meant to mention that.
That's okay. No, that's fine. But as part of the Poet Laureateship, the main thing that I wanted to do was to bring poetry and the writing of poetry and the reading of poetry into the Santa Cruz County jails. Mm-hmm. And we have those programs that started, those workshops that started are continuing now and growing. And I think we've got about 4 ongoing workshops now. We're ready to about add a 5th.
Wow.
And it's been an incredible experience, both for the people who are incarcerated in the jails and also for the teachers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's fabulous to give them the tools to express themselves. I'm sure they appreciate that. And,
there's so much, of course, that people have gone through by the time they wind up in jail. So much has been done to them and so much that they've done. And the poems are a place where they can put all that onto the page.
Right.
And also communicate in a way that they may never have had a chance to communicate with each other. It's incredible to see these men and women in groups in the jails who would not normally talk to each other. Mm-hmm. They might come from different gangs, they might come from different backgrounds, different races, mm-hmm. and in these groups, everybody is there because they really, really want to look inside themselves and bring out some of what's been in there, and they really want to hear from each other. So the level of respect and the quality of attention that they give to each other, the tenderness is very beautiful.
Wow, that sounds good. It's very brave on their part, too, to share that amongst their peers.
Incredibly brave. Incredibly brave.
They're opening themselves up for ridicule, and you know how people are. You know.
Yes, and none of that happens. None of that happens because
poetry wins again.
That's right, because it has a sacred quality, and there's that way in which within the safety of the group, that kind of sharing is welcomed in a way that is incredibly healing. And then some of the poems that come out of this experience are just strikingly beautiful and painful and deeply moving.
And and cathartic. I imagine very cathartic for those people
Absolutely.
to be able to express that and get it out.
Absolutely.
Finally get it out.
And to find out, who am I?
Right.
Who am I? Because this is true of all of us, but it's especially true if your life has been very tough. You know, a lot has been put on you of who other people think you are,
Right.
and who you've had to be just to survive,
Exactly.
and who you've been because you made a mistake, and that's not who you are. I mean, you might have done something that isn't a good thing to do, or maybe even a very bad thing to do, but that's not who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Deep
It's
down.
not your in total. It's not you.
It's not the kernel of you-ness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that program, and thank you for all those that help you with that.
Oh, yes. I'm very grateful to them all.
Yeah. I'm sure that the poets are getting something out of it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
What else would you like to talk about?
Well, I could mention something in a very much nicer place than jail. I'm going to be teaching a poetry workshop on the island of Kauai, and if you're free to travel,
I'd love to go.
yeah,
I love Kauai.
that's going to be in November, a 4-day poetry workshop. In case November this is 2018. And if people are interested in the other workshops that I teach, they could go to my website.
Good. And we'll show that on at the closing credits, and then
Great.
we'll have something else on the screen as well.
Great.
So people can contact you and go to Kauai.
I'd love that.
And how long is it? Is the week? Is it a week?
4 days.
4 days.
4 days. It's part of the Kauai Writers Conference, which follows the intensive 4-day poetry workshop. And the Kauai Writers Conference is extraordinary. It's mostly prose. I'm the only poet at it. And the writers are incredibly talented and brilliant writers, and many of whose names will be everyday household words.
Right. At some point.
Yeah. Are now already.
Yeah. I don't know that that is such a great environment over there. I think I'd rather just be on the beach.
I know, that's the only hard part. I'm going to stay longer
with a margarita,
so that I'm not torn.
Yeah. It's very inspiring over there, though. Is there anything else you'd like to mention that you're up to besides that?
Well, I teach at Pacific University's MFA.
Where is that located?
It's in Oregon. It's outside of Portland.
Okay.
In their MFA program. I love teaching there, and I could say that if anybody is interested in it's a low residency MFA program, which is a wonderful format. There's a lot of them now, but we're, I think, the very best. It's a very supportive and very rigorous program, both very cooperative, not competitive, but really serious and rigorous. And it's a great format because people don't have to move to Oregon to go. You go for 10 days a semester, and then the rest of the time you work individually with your mentor online. So, for example, this semester I have 3 students. So as a student, you do not get lost in the crowd.
I suppose not. Well, Ellen, I asked a question of all my guests. Of all the poems you've written, do you have a favorite?
I don't think I have a favorite, but there is one that is a favorite of many people who like my poetry. So
Good.
I could read that.
Well, that's a good endorsement.
That one. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a favorite.
What's the title?
It's called Gate C-22.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you to step to the podium and read that poem first, and then give us much more.
Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ellen Bass.
I'm going to start with this poem, Gate C-22. At Gate C-22 in the Portland airport, a man in a broadband leather hat kissed a woman arriving from Orange County. They kissed and kissed and kissed. Long after the other passengers clicked the handles of their carry-ons and wheeled briskly toward short-term parking, the couple stood there, arms wrapped around each other like he'd just staggered off the boat at Ellis Island, like she'd been released at last from ICU, snapped out of a coma, survived bone cancer, made it down from Annapurna in only the clothes she was wearing. Neither of them was young. His beard was gray. She carried a few extra pounds you could imagine her saying she had to lose. But they kissed lavish kisses, like the ocean in the early morning, the way it gathers and swells, sucking each rock under, swallowing it again and again. We were all watching. Passengers waiting for the delayed flight to San Jose, the stewardesses, the pilots, the aproned woman icing Cinnabons, the man selling sunglasses. We couldn't look away. We could taste the kisses crushed in our mouths. But the best part was his face when he drew back and looked at her. His smile soft with wonder, almost as though he were a mother, still open from giving birth. As your mother must have looked at you, no matter what happened after. If she beat you, or left you, or you're lonely now. You once lay there, the vernix not yet wiped off, and someone gazed at you as if you were the first sunrise seen from the earth. The whole wing of the airport hushed, all of us trying to slip into that woman's middle-aged body, her plaid Bermuda shorts, sleeveless blouse, glasses, little gold hoop earrings, tilting our heads up. This next poem is called Relax. Bad things are going to happen. Your tomatoes will grow a fungus, and your cat will get run over. Someone will leave the bag with the ice cream melting in the car and throw your blue cashmere sweater in the dryer. Your husband will sleep with a girl your daughter's age, her breasts spilling out of her blouse. Or your wife will remember she's a lesbian and leave you for the woman next door. The other cat, the one you never really liked, will contract a disease that requires you to pry open its feverish mouth every 4 hours. Your parents will die. No matter how many vitamins you take, how much Pilates, you'll lose your keys, your hair, and your memory. If your daughter doesn't plug her heart into every live socket she passes, you'll come home to find your son has emptied the refrigerator, dragged it to the curb, and called the used appliance store for a pickup, drug money. The Buddha tells a story of a woman chased by a tiger. When she comes to a cliff, she sees a sturdy vine and climbs halfway down. But there's also a tiger below, and 2 mice, one white, one black, scurry out and begin to gnaw at the vine. At this point, she notices a wild strawberry growing from a crevice. She looks up, down, at the mice. Then she eats the strawberry. So here is the view, the breeze, the pulse in your throat. Your wallet will be stolen. You'll get fat. Slip on the bathroom tiles in a foreign hotel and crack your hip. You'll be lonely. Oh, taste how sweet and tart the red juice is, how the tiny seeds crunch between your teeth. This next poem is called The Morning After. You stand at the counter, pouring boiling water over the French roast, oily perfume rising in smoke. And when I enter, you don't look up. You're hurrying to pack your lunch, snapping the lids on little plastic boxes while you call your mother to tell her you'll take her to the doctor. I can't see a trace of the little slice of heaven we slipped into last night. A silk kimono, floating satin ponds and copper koi, stars falling to the water. Didn't we shoulder our way through the cleft in the rock of the everyday and tear up the grass in the pasture of pleasure? If the soul isn't a separate vessel we carry from form to form, but more like Aristotle's breath of life, the work of the body that keeps it whole, then last night, darling, our souls were busy. But this morning, it's like you're wearing a bad wig, disguised so I won't recognize you. Or maybe so you won't know yourself, as that animal burned down to pure desire. I don't know how you do it. I want to throw myself onto the kitchen tile and bare my throat. I want to slick back my hair and tap dance up the wall. I want to do it all over again. Dive back into that brawl, that raw and radiant free-for-all. But you are scribbling a shopping list because the kids are coming for the weekend, and you're going to make your special crab cakes that have ruined me for all other crab cakes forever. I wanted to write a poem about oysters for a long time, and also because I love them, and also I wanted to write a poem about people who believe in reincarnation and that whole huge topic that comes up in so many spiritual and religious beliefs. And then somehow they came together, and this is called reincarnation. Who would believe in reincarnation if she thought she would return as an oyster? Eagles and wolves are popular. Even domesticated cats have their appeal. It's not terribly distressing to imagine being Missy, nibbling kibble and lounging on the windowsill. But I doubt the toothsome oyster has ever been the totem of any shaman fanning the motherpiece tarot or smudging with sage. Yet perhaps we could do worse than aspire to be a plump bivalve. Humbly, the oyster persists in filtering seawater and fashioning the daily irritations into luster. Dash a dot of Tabasco, pair it with a dry martini. Not only will this tender button inspire an erotic fire in tuxedoed men and women whose shoulders gleam in candlelight, this hermit praying in its rocky cave, this anchorite of iron, calcium, and protein, is practically a molluscan saint, revered and sacrificed, body and salty liquor of the soul. The oyster is devoured, surrendering all, again and again, for love. Some of you may not remember the Motherpiece Tarot, but in the 70s it was a very popular feminist tarot deck, and made by actually Santa Cruz women. And just recently Dior has put some of the images from the Motherpiece Tarot on their clothes, and in the New York Times there was the death card images right on a Dior handbag on page 3 of the Times a few weeks ago. So you just never know anymore where anything is going to be, and I think it's kind of wonderful. If you knew. What if you knew you'd be the last to touch someone? If you were taking tickets, for example, at the theater, tearing them, giving back the ragged stubs, you might take care to touch that palm. Brush your fingertips along the lifeline's crease. When a man pulls his wheeled suitcase too slowly through the airport, when the car in front of me doesn't signal, when the clerk at the pharmacy won't say thank you, I don't remember they're going to die. A friend told me she'd been with her aunt. They'd just had lunch, and the waiter, a young gay man with plum black eyes, joked as he served the coffee, kissed her aunt's powdered cheek when they left. Then they walked half a block and her aunt dropped dead on the sidewalk. How close does the dragon's spume have to come? How wide does the crack in heaven have to split? What would people look like if we could see them as they are? Soaked in honey, stung and swollen, reckless, pinned against time. I have the amazing good fortune to teach in some of the most beautiful places on the planet, and I teach down at Esalen in Big Sur, California. And as I was about to leave one time, I was standing there on the cliffs looking out over the Pacific. It was a glorious sunny day, you know, the ocean just all sparkling with all that light broken up on it. And this thought came through my mind. I'm glad I don't believe in God. I couldn't stand it. And what that meant to me was, if I did believe in a personified God, and I believed that God was looking down and seeing what we do to the environment and to each other, and I loved that God, then I would have compassion for that God. And how could anyone bear that much compassion for that God? So that line left the poem. I call a line like that the bay leaf. It flavors the soup, but you don't want people to actually have to eat it. And so this is the poem that emerged. It's called God's Grief. Great parent who must have started out with such high hopes. What magnitude of suffering, the immensity of guilt, the staggering despair, a mind the size of the sun burning with longing, a heart huge as a gray whale breaching, streaming seawater against the pale sky. Man God or beast God, God that breathes in every pleated leaf, throat sac of frog, pin feather and shaft, God of plutonium and penicillin, drunk sleeping on the subway grate, God of Joan of Arc, God of Crazy Horse, Lady Day, bringing us to our knees, God of Houdini with hands like a river, of Einstein regret running thick in his veins, God of Stalin, God of Somoza, God of the Long March, the Trail of Tears, the trains, God of Allende and God of Tookie, the strawberry picker, fire in his back, God of midnight, God of winter, God of rouged children, sold with a week's lodging and airfare to Thailand, God in trouble, God at the end of his rope, sleepless, helpless, desperate God, frantic God, whale heart lost in the shallows, beached on the sand, parched, blistered, crushed by gravity's massive weight. The thing is to love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it, and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief waits you like your own flesh, only more of it, of grief. You think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes. And you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. This is a newer poem. It's called Indigo. As I'm walking on West Cliff Drive, a man runs toward me, pushing one of those jogging strollers with shock absorbers so the baby can keep sleeping, which this baby is. I can just get a glimpse of its almost translucent eyelids. The father is young, a jungle of indigo and carnelian, tattooed from knuckle to jaw, leafy vines and blossoms, saints and symbols. Thick wooden plugs pierce his lobes, and his sunglasses testify to the radiance haloed around him. I'm so jealous, as I often am. It's a kind of obsession. I want him to have been my child's father. I want to have married a man who wanted to be in a body, who wanted to live in it so much that he marked it up like a book, underlining, highlighting, writing in the margins, I was here. Not like my dead ex-husband, who was always fighting against the flesh, who sat for hours on his zafu chanting Om, and then went out and broke his hand punching the car. I imagine when this galloping man gets home, he's going to want to have sex with his wife, who slept in late. And then he'll eat barbecued ribs and let the baby teethe on a bone while he drinks a cold, dark beer. I can't stop wishing my daughter had had a father like that. I can't stop wishing I'd had that life. Oh, I know it's a miracle to have a life, any life at all. It took 8 years for my parents to conceive me. First there was the war, and then just waiting. And my mother's bones so narrow, she had to be slit and I airlifted. That anyone is born, each precarious success from sperm and egg to zygote, embryo, infant is a wonder. And here I am, alive, almost 70 years, and nothing has killed me. Not the car I totaled running a stop sign, or the spirochete that screwed into my blood. Not the tree that fell in the forest exactly where I was standing. My best friend shoving me backward so I fell on my ass as it crashed. I'm alive, and I gave birth to a child. So she didn't get a father who'd sling her onto his shoulder. And so much else she didn't get. I've cried most of my life over that. And now there's everything that we can't talk about. We love, but cannot take too much of each other. Yet she is the one who, when I asked her to kill me, if I no longer had my mind, we were on our way into Ross, shopping for dresses. That's something she likes, and they all look adorable on her. She's the only one who didn't hesitate or refuse or waver or flinch. Okay, she said, as we strode across the parking lot. But when's the cutoff? That's what I need to know. When you return. Fallen leaves will climb back into trees. Shards of the shattered vase will rise and reassemble on the table. Plastic raincoats will refold into their flat envelopes. The egg, bald yolk, and its transparent halo slide back into the thin calcium shell. Curses will pour back into mouths, letters unwrite themselves, words siphoned up into the pen. My gray hair will darken and become the feathers of a black swan. Bullets will snap back into their chambers, the powder tamped tight in brass casings. Borders will disappear from maps, rust revert to oxygen and time. The fire return to the log to the tree, the white root curled up in the unsplit seed. Birdsong will fly into the lark's lungs, answers become questions again. When you return, sweaters will unravel and wool grow on the sheep. Rock will go home to mountain, gold to vein. Wine crushed into the grape, oil pressed into the olive, silk reeled into the spider's belly. Night moths tucked close into cocoons, ink drained from the indigo tattoo. Diamonds will be returned to coal, coal to rotting ferns, rain to clouds, light to stars, sucked back and back into one timeless point, the way it was before the world was born, that fresh, that whole, nothing broken, nothing torn apart.
Thank you, Ellen Bass. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for watching the Central Coast Poetry Show. Again, my name is Jim Russo, your host. Find us again, and good night.